it's one of those things that when I first discovered it and I first got introduced to the chancellors and engaged their houses, it was by the engagement that opened up the revelation. So I didn't know what I was going through or what I was experiencing in the beginning. You know, going into the precepts house and everything is like, whoa, there's windows here that take me figuratively into the very heart of God, into the eternal heart of God and things. I'm like seeing things. It's just like, whoa, this is too much. Couldn't handle it. It was just so beyond anything that I understood. So I didn't know what it meant. I just had the experience, and then go into the statue room and then finding within the statue things, all these eyes, and these eyes were seeing things differently and have these different perspectives, and they were turning here, there. And I'm like, whoa, what is all this about? You know, so I had the experience, and the experience was somewhat symbolic of what the meaning of it was, but I didn't know what it meant. You know, eventually, having experienced all the 12 houses, had the experiences, and then went back and engaged God around it for quite a while, I realized that these worked, you know, in alignment when threes become four and threes become four and three become four. And then I saw the cycle, and I saw how the cycle had worked in life. So the Father gave me some insight into in my life where these cycles had taken place, you know, without me, you know, knowing what was going on, but they did happen in my life. And something triggered a revelation of a precept of God. Whether that would be reading a book. You know, the first things that happened in my life as a teenager were reading some books that totally, you know, blew my mind in a sense. And that's exactly what they did. They completely changed my thinking. And that triggered the cycle. And eventually it changed me. You know, now I see how that worked, and I see how it functioned, and I see that now from the position I am in now. But then I just it was happening. But now I can cooperate with it. So whenever I have some revelation of a precept of God, I know there's a cycle of change for me to enter into. There's a cycle which is going to deconstruct, renew, and bring me into a new place. And a new sense of identity and purpose. So I've learned to cooperate with it. Now, that didn't mean I engineer it, but I cooperate with these cycles as I move through them. And I can accelerate those cycles if I embrace it and engage it, or I can hinder those cycles if I choose not to. So, but I am not in control of it in a way. God sets the cycle by giving me an experience or a revelation of himself that brings about the whole change, that brings about then the release of the full resources of God in my life for that whole change to take place. And whatever it might be brings me into a place of identity which goes beyond where I was when I started, you know. And I've learned to recognize that this has happened many times in my life, and then learned to see, usually when I engage the firestones, that was a trigger of a precept of God. And all of a sudden I'm on a cycle, and that cycle did accelerate. You know, it started off, took a couple of years, and then 18 months, and then eventually the cycle would speed up. And because I learned to embrace it and I learned to cooperate with it, and I was more aware of what was happening, and therefore embraced fully what was happening in that way. So it's been an interesting journey of discovering these cycles in our lives. And one cycle builds on another cycle and builds on another cycle, because they're complementary. You know, each time I engaged the firestones, it was a complementary experience that added to the last experience, or went deeper than the last experience. And then the cycle eventually began to accelerate, because now I was more sensitive to and cooperating with it. Well, that's just the personal level of it. You know, it may require people coming together to form a cycle based on a larger group. And I believe what's happening in the Earth shield, what's happening with the solar system, what's happening with the north, south, east, and west gates, all of that is a cycle, a revelatory cycle that's bringing us into deeper and deeper into the purposes of God and the heart of God. And so I can see the revelation came about. It started to bring about a change in thinking, how we did things, and then how we began to outwork that change, and then opened up all sorts of opportunities to outwork that. And then we found that we had new mantles of authority within it. We had new tools to use within it. All this cycle took place, and our whole culture changed, and the affairs of how we function changed. And I think that was with a group of 4 or 5 people who began to experience that. Now, I don't think probably anyone other than me within that group really wouldn't understand about this cycle or circle of the deeps process, but we all participated in it, whether they knew about it or not, because we were together and we were one heart in it. So it did open up a whole different realm. It brought about an understanding of how we could create things. It brought about how we could engage constellational portals, how we can engage dimensional realities. All of that was brought about by a group of people who were just willing to pursue the heart of God and engage God in such a way that it opened up this cycle to take place.